He was a complete outsider who didn't just win a few battles. I mean, he literally redrew the entire map of Europe and fundamentally reshaped modern law. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to unpack the epic, dramatic arc of Napoleon Bonaparte. Let's get right into it.
But right off the bat, when you look at his legacy, you hit this massive historical paradox. Seriously, was he this incredible visionary who exported the Enlightenment across Europe? Or was he just a vicious warlord driven by an insatiable thirst for personal glory? Well, it's a debate that's been raging for 2 centuries, and the facts we're exploring today are going to help you decide for yourself.
Section 1. The Corsican Outsider. To understand the emperor, we first need to look at his beginnings.
So he was born in August 1769 in Ajaccio, Corsica. And right away, you have to realize Napoleon was a product of a world in flux, shifting borders and colonial struggles. Now, his parents, Carlo and Letizia, they did hold minor nobility, but they were entirely detached from the wealth and influence of the Parisian elite. He was miles away from the center of French power.
But he had a secret weapon, and that was his mother, Letizia. She was absolutely the true anchor of his youth. The sources describe her as having masculine strength and unyielding discipline. She literally hardwired into him those relentless, highly organized traits that, well, eventually built a world conqueror. Growing up in a packed household of 8 kids, his early life was this delicate balancing act. See, his father initially fought for Corsican independence, but eventually traded that resistance for French reconciliation. Because of that, young Napoleon was caught between 2 totally different worlds, his proud Corsican heritage on one side and the sprawling French Empire on the other. It's a classic outsider story.
Moving on to Section 2, Seizing Revolutionary Chaos. Let's see how his rapid rise actually happened.
Okay, so take a look at this timeline. The French Revolution erupts in 1789. Where others saw a terrifying, collapsing society, this young artillery officer saw a ladder. It's amazing. Over just 15 years, he leveraged the complete power vacuum left by a dismantled aristocracy to climb all the way from a junior officer to crowned emperor. That is a meteoric ascent, if there ever was one.
His big miracle moment came in 1793 at the Siege of Toulon. He used this brilliant, innovative grasp of artillery placement to literally force the mighty British fleet to flee. It was an absolute masterclass in modern geometry and firepower, and it earned him a staggering promotion to brigadier general when he was just 24 years old. No way, right? Just 24.
He completely redefined what leadership looked like. He ditched the whole concept of aristocratic birthright and led through sheer tactical genius. I mean, whether he was ruthlessly clearing out royalist mobs from Parisian streets with a whiff of grape shot, or marching ragtag, underfunded armies to stunning victories across Italy, his command, which was based strictly on merit, was completely unmatched at the time.
Section 3. Emperor and Reformer. Time to look at how he overhauled the state.
Because here's the thing you have to understand. He wasn't just a warlord. By 1799, taking the ultimate gamble with a coup, he'd seized political power and became a prolific state builder. Just look at this breakdown. The Napoleonic Code unified a completely fragmented legal system into something that still actually shapes global law today. By abolishing feudalism, standardizing religious freedom, and creating the Légion d'honneur, he was essentially hardwiring the concept of meritocracy straight into the French state.
Which brings us to Section 4. Conquest and Overreach. Honestly, we can't do this explainer without talking about his continuous warfare.
Taken on almost every major power in Europe, Napoleon became the absolute master of battlefield mobility. He consistently divided and conquered his enemies, and this culminated in these sun-drenched masterpieces of strategy like the Battle of Austerlitz. He wasn't just playing the game of war, guys. He was totally rewriting the rules of engagement on the fly. But ambition has a price. And eventually, his ambition outpaced his resources. These steps map it perfectly. First, the relentless guerrilla warfare in Spain, the Spanish Ulcer, started heavily draining imperial resources. Then came the big one, the catastrophic 1812 invasion of Russia. Those freezing, brutal retreats decimated his grand army. It was a chain reaction, a literal domino effect heading toward total collapse.
Section 5, Waterloo and Legacy. The Final Fall.
The total collapse finally culminated in 1815 on the fields of Belgium. At the Battle of Waterloo, his enemies finally took his own strategies and used them against him.
Facing a highly coordinated coalition led by the British commander Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, Napoleon's strategic brilliance was finally crushed under the weight of a united Europe. It's a dramatic fall. The man who had completely redrawn the continent was stripped of his power, his empire, the whole shebang. Banished to the edge of the world, he spent his final years in lonely exile on the remote, tiny rock of St. Helena. He died there in 1821.
So, when we evaluate his legacy today, we're left with this stark duality. On one hand, you have the modernizer. This was an unparalleled intellect who dragged a messy, chaotic state into the future and basically forced the rest of Europe to adapt or die. But on the other hand, you have the conqueror, a figure of massive ego whose insatiable ambition plunged the entire continent into decades of exhausting, brutal warfare.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually judge the Corsican who conquered Europe? Was he a true visionary of the Enlightenment who paved the way for the modern world? Or simply a vicious warlord consumed by his own ambition? I'll leave you with that provocative question from our sources to ponder long after this explainer ends.